Welcome to another episode of Blame It on Marketing. We are going to be talking about prepping for your first board meeting as a marketer.
I'm Chris Kelly. I'm head of marketing at John D. Wood. My role is kind of all things marketing. Been working in marketing for the last 20 years or so.
Why are marketers so desperate to be in the boardroom?
I read the other day 92% of the FTSE 100 companies don't have a marketer on the board, which it kind of surprised me as well.
Yeah.
In order to get yourself into the boardroom, make yourself noticed. And I think all of this just comes back to understanding the types of questions that are going to be asked to you. You know that CFO is probably not going to be asking about the number of likes on Facebook or Instagram. He's not going to care.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Blame It on Marketing. We are going to be talking about prepping for your first board meeting as a marketer. Thing we've done a lot of between Emma and I, and it's always a little bit nerve-wracking, so we're really excited to talk about it and hopefully share some awesome tips with you. We're here with Chris Kelly, and I will throw it over to Chris to have a little bit of an intro about himself.
Well, hi guys, thanks for having me on. I'm Chris Kelly. I'm head of marketing at John D. Wood, one of the UK's oldest estate agents, 150 years old. And yes, my role at John D. Wood is kind of all things marketing, from brand, PR, content, all the way through to performance media channels. Been working in marketing for the last 20 years or so, in media agency side, and then kind of a various number of different roles from a digital perspective at Pizza Express, Crew Clothing, and Foxtons.
Do you still get free Pizza Express vouchers? Because that would be great.
No, we never got free Pizza Express vouchers. No, this is
outrageous.
When I first joined Pizza Express, it was based in Baker Street, and they had a development kitchen, and that was really quite special. They had lots of dough balls were eaten, lots of margarita pizzas, and they came in handy on a Thursday night or Friday morning. Yeah, that was super useful. Great brand though, and great time there.
Good start. So before we get into this, Chris, obviously you have earned your marketing stripes by the sound of things. So you will definitely, no doubt, have a deep, dark marketing confession that you can share with everybody. So please reveal all.
Sure. I mean, anyone who doesn't have a bucket load of these in their back pocket is probably lying. Yeah, mine was, I worked for Which, the Consumer Association, for a few years in the acquisition. We had a partnership with John Lewis. And I managed that relationship with John Lewis. I was part of the affiliate and partnership team. And we had an offer with John Lewis whereby if you took out a Which subscription for £1, you got a £10 voucher for John Lewis. A deep offer. And nothing really happened with the offer. The offer went live on Monday and nothing happened with it. Saw a bit of an uptick, but not much. Until all of a sudden, I came in over the weekend and I saw on Hot UK Deals, this offer got put on UK Deals at about 6 p.m. on Friday night, which was really nice. So over the weekend, there was lots of flurry of activity regarding this offer. And we came in on Monday and record numbers of kind of new trials taken out. But obviously with any subscription business, it's all about what the next month looks like. And so our conversion rate took quite a big beating. Yeah. So I really wasn't flavour of the month with our fellow marketing teams, our CRM teams, analytics teams, our chief marketing officer.
Do you remember like how many signups you got?
Yeah, it was thousands.
Oof. Okay. So not only was it thousands of new signups, it's £10 per sign up.
£10
as well.
a time. Yeah. So we did have, I mean, we were fortunate that it was still a target audience that we wanted to attract.
So we are talking about preparing for your first board meeting, but let's kind of step one back from that. Why are marketers quite often, not going to say all the time, but quite often, so desperate to be in the boardroom? And should we even be there in the first place?
Yeah, it's a good question. I read the other day 92% of the FTSE 100 companies don't have a marketer on the board, which it kind of surprised me as well.
Yeah,
surprised me. Look, I'm quite fortunate that I've got an MD who really values marketing, so I'm there, which is good. But I've worked for many a business where that hasn't been the case, and I think that kind of headline stat highlights that. I think why are there so many marketers desperate to be in the boardroom? I think it's probably to work out. I think the shape of marketing and the kind of senior marketers have evolved over the last kind of 15, 20 years or so. Every kind of senior marketer I've ever worked for has been the one that's been the most commercial. I think the language of the boardroom is very much a is a finance one, is a trading one, and I think those marketers who more commercially focused kind of want to be there because they think they can add value. And that's why I think there's a kind of a desperate need to be in there. So I would say kind of understanding what type of marketer you are, I think is a good point. I mean, if you are a creative marketer and doesn't like getting involved in the kind of growth of business or commercial challenges or trade performances, then it's okay. The boardroom might not be for you, but I'm finding that more and more of the people I work with and the marketers I engage with want to be there because they understand the levers to help grow a business. And there's a perception of marketing that has changed over the last few years in terms of shifting the focus from marketing being a cost to being an investment, and they can be a huge part of the growth strategy. So I think that's why marketers are desperate to be in there, because I think they can add value. But I think you need to understand what marketer you are before you do that.
I think the other thing that we talk about a lot on the podcast, Chris, and I'm sure you sort of hear this as well, is that it is still really difficult, even if you are a commercially minded marketer and you're in that camp where you feel like you should be in the boardroom, is that you feel like you're still not necessarily, marketing as a profession isn't necessarily taken as seriously. And the only way that you feel like you can kind of affect any kind of change or perception of marketing is to be in the room. And I certainly feel that. I certainly feel that way. I would absolutely be elbowing my way into the room because I need the people around me to understand that not only do I understand how to grow the business, but I get the economic challenges that we face. We kind of, like someone said it to me once, we're horizon scanners, which I don't know that every, SLT member is. I don't know, Ruta, if you would agree with that, but I certainly think that's the way that you affect change for marketing, is to be in the room.
Yeah, I think the comment Chris made about it depends on what kind of marketer you are is really kind of the key here. If you're going to go into the boardroom and show them your beautiful new adverts that you're going to have on Google and that kind of thing, like it's going to be a hard re-invite.
Yeah.
Back to another meeting. If you're coming in and you've aligned with sales, then you know how much you need to generate for sales to be successful and all of those things. And it's a very natural process of like, okay, if we're looking at sales and customer success and product, then we need to be looking at marketing because that's like the beginning of that chain, right? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Whilst you guys were talking, I was doing a quick Google on who's in the FTSE 100. And I was like, maybe it's all like mining companies, like stuff that wouldn't necessarily need a marketer. No, it's lots of huge retail brands. So
insane.
they definitely have marketing. It's not an industry problem.
And yet those type of businesses rely so heavily on marketing. So it is really shocking to discover that they're not in the room. That's beyond shit. So next problem. So you want to be in the room, you're desperate to be in the room, but you're not invited. So I guess, Chris, how would you start to go about getting yourself invited into the boardroom if you're not already on the roster?
A few things here, like I say, kind of I'm lucky that I'm in there, so that's good. But what I would try and do is make myself more visible. Look, if you're doing good work, then we should be talking about it. And I think marketers are, and it's something I struggled with for a long time, is we work in marketing and we promote our brands that we work for, and we all do a good job of that, and we all work really hard doing that. But we probably don't spend enough time promoting our own brand and our own work. And therefore, people in marketing should be a bit more prouder of what they're doing. So what I'm coming to is, in order to get yourself into the boardroom, make yourself noticed. Share good news stories, share kind of fun activity that your team has been doing, celebrate success, and have those moments where I deliberately try and ring up various directors around the business just to get their view on sort of a type of marketing, or just gain their thoughts on something. But it's just kind of having those regular touch points with those senior leaders, just gauging their thoughts. And a tip with that is, everyone likes to have their ego massaged. Asking someone for their thoughts on something kind of really, really helps. Oh, I'm glad I got you. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this. Doesn't matter whether you're 20 or whether you're 80, you want someone to have that values your opinion. So I often do that just to try and make sure that people are kind of remembering the work that we're doing. And it also helps you engage with the other senior leaders as well, because that's a key part, because the senior leaders in the business do talk to each other, obviously, and there's lots of communication that goes on. Think, what do you think of those guys at the moment? And there's some really good work coming out of that department at the moment. Maybe we should do that. Yeah, and those conversations are generally good conversations. But that's kind of what I'll try and do. I'd also say that it is also a scary place as well. So again, back to the point of how do you get yourself into the boardroom? Kind of remember if you want to be there. I mean, I just presented to a company conference of 350 people or so. Don't mind that. That's fine. I'd much prefer doing that rather than presenting to 10 people in a boardroom. That's an intimidating place if you're not ready for it. But I would say build your network internally would help. Share success, and that should get you into the boardroom.
Yeah.
It takes time though.
It does.
Any tips, Ruta? Because when Ruta and I worked in house, Ruta she worked her way up the ladder and then she was in the room, right? But obviously you went from not going into the boardroom into the boardroom. Any tips from that experience?
So my first board meeting there actually was like 8 days into me getting the job, because they were excited about marketing and they were like, oh, what's she going to do? So I had to go and like explain what I was going to do, but I had no idea what I was going to do. And I wasn't even like a head of marketing. I was just like a senior marketing person. But getting that exposure really early on was quite nice because I got to meet everyone and I realized that, they're normal human beings, and they're quite lovely. So that was really helpful. And then I used to appear maybe once a quarter until I became head of marketing, and I used to do every board meeting. I think for me, getting into the boardroom, I didn't have to like fight over too much. Like if I had something significant to talk about, then I could go in. But I think if you are struggling and you're not maybe you're in a larger organization and that's just not something that you normally do, I think I would come up with something that you want from the board. I think one part of a board meeting is just presenting stuff and saying what you've done. But the really useful part of a board meeting, which I talk about all the time, is actually asking for input and help and assistance. So if you're working on something and you need assistance from the board because maybe your team doesn't have a particular expertise, or there's some partnerships you want to do, or there's somebody on the board that has the knowledge about this thing, going to whoever it is that could invite you to the board, whether it's your boss or your boss's boss or whatever it is, and be like, hey, I really need help with this thing. I would love to come and ask if that's all right with you. And I can like talk everyone through and that kind of thing. I think that's a good way to potentially start getting that exposure. So, Emma, since you've started consulting, I feel like you've been in lots of board meetings because that's kind of part of the shtick.
Okay.
But have you ever had to like be like, no, I should come and present at the board meeting. Don't just take my slides and talk about them.
I mean, not since I've been a consultant, but in a previous life, and this was not even for marketing reasons. This was for other things. But to go into a board meeting where there was a lot of board members, because this was at an NGO and the boardroom was full of about 40 people, and they're all CEOs of the biggest NGOs, there's WHO, UN people in the room. It's like, and then stick your hand up and say, we need something and we need you to sign off on this thing. Absolutely terrifying. And I just remember before going in, it's the only time I think I can really remember doing this in my career, which says a lot maybe, is rehearsing what I was going to say, and making sure that I, was going to do what I needed them to approve justice. I was going to really try and articulate my points well. And so, I rehearsed, I made sure my slides were clear, all those kind of things that you do in marketing that you might take for granted. But it's like, if you get that opportunity, obviously you feel like there's a lot of pressure, especially if it's the first time. But just go back to the core principles of marketing. Who are your audience in front of you? is your message clear? Are they clear? And, do you feel prepared? And if somebody asks you a difficult question, are you prepared to kind of handle it? Have you kind of got your rebuttals down and all that kind of stuff? And that's not to put pressure on you, but you can obviously rehearse that with people in your team, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your mum, whoever.
And I'm a big advocate of recording my presentations as well, and record myself and listen to myself back. It's fairly painful the first few times, but it definitely helps.
Yeah.
Definitely helps.
So, okay, so you've now been invited in. How would you, obviously we've talked a bit there about prepping. We've talked about rehearsing and getting clear on your slides and stuff. Is there anything else you would add, Chris, in terms of prep?
I would try and gauge the mood of the boards about marketing, kind of, because you wouldn't have been the first person to go into the boardroom. So kind of, what do they like? What do they dislike about marketing? Try and understand it from their perspective. Because like you said before, kind of marketing going into the boardroom, you're probably the only marketer in there, right? There'd be ops, there'd be trading, there'd be finance, there'd be kind of, you are the Lone Ranger there, really. So trying to get a steer of what they're thinking is really important. So if you can get some minutes from the last meeting, that would be super helpful. But trying to gauge some feedback in terms of kind of how marketing has been presented previously would be super good. And I think all of this just comes back to understanding the types of questions that are going to be asked to you. The CFO is going to be asking a particular question. He's probably not going to be asking about the number of likes on Facebook or Instagram. So be prepared with the answers that you think people are going to ask. And sometimes even prompt people kind of those questions as well. Sometimes it's instead of waiting for the question, almost raise it yourself to say, look, we recognize this is a challenge and this is our response to it. So rather than being kind of waited for that question, that inevitable question that will come, lean into it and make sure that you've got an answer for it already. And as you quite rightly mentioned, kind of prep that answer. It's really important. That is the hardest bit of being in the boardroom, is being able to think on your feet and answer in a concise way.
I think everyone gets hard questions and they won't know the answer and they have to figure out how to answer it, of like, I'll get that to you later, or whatever it is, I think.
The marketing questions, though, is that, so often the answer is it depends. And then you open yourself up to this can of worms, right? Don't you? And it's like, I'm only saying that because it's true.
One thing I've been using recently, Copilot, has been fantastic for me during meetings. Fantastic. Some of the prompts are really amazing. Tell me all the unanswered questions in a meeting. Brilliant. That's fantastic.
Love that.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful. Download it, get access to it, and run your presentations through Copilot, or even just any other AI tools to work out what questions might come back. Worked out quite nicely for me.
That's really cool. I think the other thing, so there's being prepped for some of the questions that that you can answer. And then there is also the having the confidence to say, I don't know that yet, or we are experimenting with that, and to give people that answer, but to deliver it confidently. Practice saying, no, I don't know, and I will come back to you in as many ways, shapes and forms as you can, I think. Because you will have to say that at some point, because it's just inevitable.
And I think the boardroom does need to be an honest place. I think it's a time where people have to see the whites in people's eyes and say, this is really good, or this isn't very good, and this needs to change. So you can't have any ambiguity in that room. Everyone needs to kind of be very aware of what the actions are and what the outputs are of that meeting.
And that's probably a good thing to gauge from the minutes. Like, if you can get hold of past minutes, because sometimes boardrooms aren't a honest place. Honestly, prepping, my only other bit of commentary was that it depends on what your board setup is like, but sometimes there will be quite a few non-exec board members in there, so people that just kind of float into the business a couple of times a month and check in on it. And a lot of the times they're paid and they have to seem like they're providing value, and sometimes that comes across as asking really hard questions that are not necessarily hard because they need to be hard because they're really valuable, but they're hard because they need to sound clever and like they're adding value. So that will also happen. And again, if you get asked one of those questions, just say, I will follow up with you. And then chances are no one's even going to remember that happened when you do follow up, or that they asked that, because it was kind of like a bit of a showmanship question to make sure that people are like, oh yeah, they know their stuff, you know. Good question. Good question.
Yeah, the NEDs are usually the ones that ask the worst questions. And it is really different. I think that is the problem for marketers, is that, you know, you, like you rightly said, Chris, there are lots of people in the room who don't understand marketing. And you can quite easily dig yourself a hole with the like, oh no, it depends. Let me get into the detail, and just don't go there. Learn when someone's asked you a hard question to do the like, no, I'll come back to you. The other thing that is good, I think, if you do have to do that, is that you do come back to, I know Ruth is saying like they might not remember. You will show yourself to be the expert that you are if you do actually come back to people on the questions that they've asked, even if what they've asked is really hard or maybe slightly pointless. Like if you can come back to them and show them, then I feel like you're building kudos with that group, because they're like, oh no, they were listening. They did come back, even if it was something ridiculous. Like, I don't know, I've had some ridiculous requests
What's
before.
the ROI of a LinkedIn post?
Well, yeah,
Well,
that kind of thing.
What's the link? Yeah, what's the ROI on the action toy? Good question.
So speaking of knowing kind of what level of detail to get into when you're answering, let's talk about what kind of data and information you should be presenting.
Yeah, tricky to navigate. Look, I think kind of the elephant in the room is you probably need to get on board with PowerPoint. Now that sounds a little bit boring, and I'll probably come into a bit more detail, but beyond that. But I've seen presenters struggle with PowerPoint. We've had it recently, whereby the PowerPoint presentation is dictating what you're trying to say. And people get flustered about the PowerPoint, and oh, this doesn't look very good, and oh, I'm trying to change this, and I have to stop people and say, what are you trying to say? What's your story that you're trying to say? Write it down on a piece of paper, and then the slides will follow. Unfortunately, PowerPoint is going to have to be the way that you present it. Unfortunately, our SEO agency recently did a 120-page document for us, deck for us, and then wrote a video, or recorded himself doing a video, kind of a 10-minute synopsis. Very good, very good. So if you do have a lot of slides, that's okay. You can maybe send a kind of pre-read of that with a 10-minute snippet. I thought was particularly good. But I think importantly, know your story, know what you want to say. And usually for me, that's kind of split out into what the strategic roadmap is of what we're trying to deliver. So outlining what we are delivering, what we have delivered, with a clear roadmap of each deliverables of when it's going to be delivered. Not only present short-term kind of plans, but also the long-term vision as well. Because remember, kind of, we don't, in a boardroom, we're not talking about tomorrow or Monday. We're talking about kind of 3-5 years down the line. So in order to get credibility, you have to start thinking a bit like that, to say, right, this is what we're doing next month, but this is where we want to be at the end of 25. This is where we want to be at the end of 26. In terms of the data that I would show, I think it's all of the key metrics. When I first started at John D. Wood, I made a point of aligning our business, aligning our marketing goals to our business goals. So therefore, when I'm in a boardroom, I don't talk, it is an important metric for us, but I don't talk about engagement on Instagram. I don't talk about followers on certain social channels. I'm not saying it's not important. Of course it is, but that's a marketing metric. And obviously, if there's any big milestones, then they will be flagged during those meetings. But it is about two key things for us at John D. Wood. It's about increasing our brand awareness and increasing market appraisals, and how that aligns to business performance. And that seems to have resonated really well for us. And my slides are fairly dull when it comes into the board pack, which I probably need to work on. But there's graphs and there's numbers, and there's cost per acquisition, there's cost per lead, and this is
love to hear
we're
it.
doing. But what I will say on that is I've probably gone too far down that route, and we need to remember that we work in marketing. So have some fun. have some fun. Kind of, it's more often than not that marketing might be the funnest bit of the board pack, right?
Should be.
Depending on how good trading performance is, but it's often the most exciting bit. Whether you've got a new creative, whether you've got some new videos you want to show, whether you've got some concept work you want to show, that's usually the time to show it, to gain some excitement and some fun. So yes, you absolutely have to demonstrate you know your numbers and you know what's driving business performance. But equally, we need to understand that this is our time to showcase some of the fun work we do as well, and that can be from anything from a creative perspective.
Yeah, I think it's really nice actually to do. I would agree. I think my board slides are on the boring side, apart from because the numbers aren't boring. They're not boring to me. That's how I live and die by the numbers, Chris. I'm really sorry.
Sure. No, same.
But I do recognize that the thing that is missing, and the thing that I would probably do maybe differently, is what I'd quite like to do. I mean, I also hate talking about the funnel and all that stuff because, like, whatever. But I think to help people understand why maybe you're doing some brand awareness and other bits of content and how it all sits together, to show some of the good content or the good creative that you're producing against the funnel, to show how it supports the conversion metrics maybe, or velocity, or whatever it might be metric wise that you're showing, to really give people an understanding of, like, why would we bother with a podcast? Well, that's because it sits up here, but it has a job in the in our processes, and it supports some of that stuff. So yeah, maybe that's something that I would think about adding in the future.
I agree. Yeah.
I think as well, kind of, we work in a kind of a sales business, and we want our employees to feel proud to work for,
Yeah.
and then they are. But it's difficult to make someone feel proud with an Excel spreadsheet. But if you've got a really fun,
Hey.
creative, which pays off, talking myself out of a job. If you've got a nice fun piece of creative that might go on social or kind of some other media channels, then there's a good chance that that's probably going to be seen by friends and families. Oh, don't you work for John D. Wood? Oh yeah, I saw a nice bit of kind of fun creative that you did the other week, and no, I work for them. Yeah, it's a great business, and yeah, it kind of makes everyone feel good.
I think the other thing, speaking of like employees and feeling good, that doesn't make it into board slides enough, in my experience, is actually talking about employees other than yourself in the board meeting, or like kind of talking about the marketing team. Well, why don't you highlight somebody in the marketing team that's done a really fantastic piece of work? And that way you're kind of starting to build their profile. So maybe if you leave, or if they become ahead of something, when they get to the board meeting, it's going to be a nice and familiar time for them, instead of like having to be like, who are you and what are you doing here? So that's the other thing that I would add, as much as you can in your slides, really pointing out people that are doing fantastic work. That's never going to go down badly.
Also, that's a really good point, not to go off on a slight tangent, but I think if you're in marketing and you're the senior leader and you're in the boardroom, don't gatekeep your board relationships, because I think that's one thing that a lot of people do, which makes it harder for you to step into the room, which is the relationships are kind of kept, and then the rest of the team don't have access, especially if you've got quite a big marketing team and maybe you're the CMO or director and you've got some heads of, like, get those people some exposure with the board, so that if they like you say, Rucha, if there's a succession plan or whatever, or again, if they go off and they get a new job and they become a director or whatever it might be, that they actually have some exposure to that world, because I think that's really important. I had a director of marketing when I was a head of, who did that for me, who let me come into the room and talk all the numbers. And I really appreciated it. I really appreciated that opportunity to get to know those people in the room, to build relationships with them. And she wasn't threatened, and it was lovely.
Yeah. And if you're away or you're sick or something happens, you also know somebody's gonna cover you, and you've got you've got an emergency backup if you need one, which is also fantastic, because you don't want to be coming to the board meeting sniveling and blowing your nose and feeling like shit because you've got a cold. You've got someone there for you.
You're right. It's all about empowerment, isn't it? And job growth, and get out of that comfy seat.
Before we wrap up for the episode, Chris, have you got any marketing gossip to share with us? Anything that you love, you hate, just can't get out your mind?
Lots that I hate. Let's start with that.
We're emotional
Yeah, let's
people.
go hate. Let's go and end on positive.
Let's start with the hate. Look, this might just be a personal thing. Lots of awards, aren't there, at the moment? Lots of awards. Top 40 under 40, top 41 under 41. I've just turned 40, so I think that might be why I'm kind of slightly anti that one. But yeah, here's hope for the top 41 under 41. But I think, I think, look, anyone who buys to it, fair play. Like, good for you. And we talk about personal branding a lot, and I just find it a little bit cringe, to be honest.
How do they evaluate how good a
Yeah.
marketer is?
I think it might
Like
be
that, I just can't.
how good your pitch is, maybe.
I
Yeah.
lost an award once for I won't say the award's name, but the category was like best like female. It was a female marketing award thing, and I put myself forward for it, and because I was like, why the fuck not? And it was for like best female consultant, and I lost. I obviously am a fractional CMO. I lost out to somebody who was basically a freelance graphic designer. I was pissed, guys. I was pissed off. I was
They must have got a table, presumably.
they must have done. I was to say I was vexed is an understatement.
We need to do an episode on like business awards.
Business
How
awards.
have we not done an episode on
That'd be
business
good.
awards? Because they are the most crazy thing I think that exists in the
really
B2B world.
They really
Love
are.
it. Okay, what's something you love, Chris?
Well, look, I've kind of spoken already about how my kind of brain works when it comes to kind of marketing. So I look at those brands that embrace creativity and fun, but I don't particularly look at those brands that are disruptors. I mean, there's so much creative work out there from disruptors that fantastic. Quite a lot of the gyms at the moment are doing some really cool stuff, kind of Gym Box and those kind of brands are super fun. But you know what? I think I'm not saying that's easy, because it's really not, to do that kind of creative, and it's fantastic. But I think what's really hard is trying to have fun with your creative in a traditional industry. I think that's super hard, because you have to convince again, and you have to try and get as many kind of stakeholders on board as possible. So there's a brand at the moment, it's an insurance brand called Hissox. I love some of their adverts where it's just an advert gone wrong. It's kind of a big billboard with the advert being sort of this size. And I think it's really refreshing to see that in an industry where you wouldn't necessarily see that. And I think that's really brave.
But also, do you not think there's an element of maybe like some people are waking up and going, no, our ICP is now this group of people who want this. This is what they want to see. You look at Monzo. Monzo do it really well. Freaking hilarious. And it's like they know who their ICP is, and they're like, we're not really worried if we alienate other people, because we're really clear on the people that we want to attract. Thank you so much, Chris. I hope for anybody who's listened to this episode, this is literally your breakdown how-to guide to nail your first board meeting or subsequent board meetings. And if you want to ask any of us any questions, you can find us on LinkedIn. Chris, we don't know if you're a Redditor, but you're going to become one, because we've moved the Blame It on Marketing community to Reddit. So yeah, please come and join us. Let's have some anonymous horror stories about board meetings. We love it. Thank you so much again, and we will see you soon.